because it's like this doesn't feel like one of the things that like is available to wrestle with. I was like this is foundational to what it means to be a Christian, because if Jesus isn't who he professed to be, then he isn't sufficient to do what he professed to do. We're just gonna hug it out because he's like a teddy bear in the sky. Like you look through scripture and nobody's like, man, I just want to give God a hug. Everybody is terrified when they stand before the holy and righteous God.
How many times do we look at people as enemies?
100%. Yeah.
And the Lord's like, I'm trying to save them too.
Yeah. I need that amazing grace. Yeah. The amazing grace isn't for them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's
for me. Yeah.
For me, yeah.
And we're back. Here we go, y'all.
Yes.
If you are an audio listener at this very moment in time, you're thinking, wow, another episode like we do every week.
Regular.
If you're one of our video watchers, though, you notice there's quite a difference in today's episode.
There's a third here. It's a trinity.
There's a third in the fire.
That's right.
There's a third man in the fire. The James Cavalier,
the one, the only.
Long-time viewer, first-time guest.
That's right.
I'm really excited to be here.
It's only the second time we've gone 3 wide, dude.
Yeah.
With Ruslan had one.
Ruslan had one.
The one, the only.
And then
I'm excited.
James Cavalier
one of
crushed the message this weekend.
Teaching gurus.
So good.
And so this podcast was going to be much wilder beforehand. If your plan had gone through, this would have been a much wilder.
What was my plan?
Well, for those of you who don't, because I actually think you said it in one of the podcasts.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
the idea from
exactly.
From Jeff was for me to teach one on Thursday night,
right?
And then James to teach the same passage, and then we were all going to hash it out.
A cohesive conversation. That was true.
Yeah,
it was a crazy weekend. That's kind of what
it was a wild weekend.
Was leading up to
let
that
people
stuff.
know about
so
the major change.
My daughter got married.
Come on,
Sunday, and it was amazing. It was incredible. It was emotional. It was. I mean, just the. I've been doing weddings for 20 some years.
Wow.
And then it's my time to give my daughter away. But
game changer.
And what was wild too is this wedding has changed so many times. It was originally going to be in May.
Right.
But then Sunny, her husband is in the Navy. He's from Vista, so he's a North County boy, but he's in the Navy. So they found out he's going to be deployed, so they can't do it in May. So they're going to do it in August. So mindset, okay, right. August. She comes home one night. It was like a month ago, a little over a month ago, and she's like, "We're gonna do it February 22nd."
Yeah,
I was like, "We are okay."
This year,
like
in a few weeks.
And so they laid out the reasons why, and they cut like the guest list to just basically family, and like people working the wedding, and I was like, "All right, okay, that's what we're doing."
Yeah,
and so. But it was a beautiful wedding, super chill, very easy, very fun. And
you're a father-in-law now.
I'm a father-in-law.
Yeah.
It's a new title for you.
It is, yeah. And they're staying with us because he deploys in March. So they're going to stay with us, go on their honeymoon, and then come back. And like a week or two later, he leaves.
Yeah.
And there we go.
Yeah.
New season for you, huh?
Dude, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's a trip.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So that was that. Mm-hmm. And then also like you did a wedding on Sunday as well too.
Yeah.
I did a wedding on Thursday. And a memorial service on Saturday. And it was like, well, all right. We're at it.
For those of you who wonder how well we planned these things, well, there's your answer.
There it is.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
We'll look at each other.
It was like the week before.
Like, wait, you're doing what year? Oh, okay.
Yep. And the amount of stuff you had going on, you're like, when I go, James, and then James, you were like, actually, I can teach Thursday now because the wedding is earlier.
The wedding that I was doing was going to move.
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be outside in Southern California. We thought no problem.
Right.
And they just caught the rainstorm. And so they ended up having to move. We did a shorter thing in our sanctuary. And so it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we are.
And here we are.
And here we are. Episode 35.
Come on.
If I had time, more podcasts. So, although you are a long-time listener, for those of you, maybe a quick refresher, this podcast is a podcast where if you as a teacher get to divulge
Yeah.
things that if you had more time, because a message here, about 35 minutes,
Sure.
so many things get cut for time.
Yeah.
And so, I'm actually really excited to kind of hear, especially from a different perspective. We got to
Yes.
hear, most of the time I get to hear from Jeff about this. Again, I think one time we had Rue. But for you, and I'm curious in your planning of this message. And I think you said it the Thursday night message. I heard you say, I don't know if you said it on a Sunday, but you got your choice of what to pick.
Yeah,
so I'm actually really curious. Before we even get into what you cut for the message you actually teach, I'm curious what went into your decision of selection of the passage.
Yeah. Like Jeff and I talked over, and we were kind of looking at where he was going to be and where he was going to end, and really kind of where we were in the book of Joshua. And so, again, if you're familiar with the book, Jericho is like an iconic moment in that story, and it's so cool.
Massive.
And like having gotten to do lots of like youth camps and youth ministry, it's such a preachable story. And I've done it lots of times, and so it's like I think I've got 6 messages on that story, and it's just such a great, like, it's a hitter's ballpark for sure. And so when when we were kind of talking through it, and I was reading, originally, the first message that was passed to me was like, hey, you're gonna get to do all the circumcisions. So I was like preparing myself for that.
That was also my first. It was not only, hey, you're teaching one night, it was, hey, you're gonna teach on circumcision. I was like,
So when that changed, I was like, hallelujah. But then really looking at the next kind of section of teaching of the story, I really thought and kind of ideated on what I felt this kind of interaction for Joshua meant. I think we've seen we saw kind of a bigger picture of how the people are consecrated. We saw that, with the circumcision. We saw the way in which like the communities moved to do to make the Ebenezers and the memorial stones and all those things. And so this was kind of a cool moment for Joshua as an individual to come to a place of individual surrender as a leader. And I thought, and I really thought that was such a critical perspective, right? That if we read over it, like the story of Jericho is so incredible that you kind of lose sight of this like passing story of him meeting this guy, and then we go on to this giant military victory and all that it is and all the stuff that's in there. And I thought really that there was just a lot of significance in that moment, in not only in this story of Joshua, but I think especially for us as believers, I think we can everybody likes to revel in these big victories, and so I was like, this is a cool moment, but we don't get there without what's happening here. So just felt like that was a good place to camp for a weekend.
Yeah,
that's cool.
As a teacher of the Bible, there are certain things that you don't want to give away.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, and I've actually, with certain people that have taught here before, I've been like, no, you'll do a one-off.
Sure.
Because I'm covering that one next week. Like, which is what it is. But to go, here's not only here's this passage, but here's Jericho if you want it as well too. I just want to give me a shout out.
Hey, I
wanted to say how humble I am.
No, I gave you a shout out every night because I was like, hey man, this is
100% you did, because but you're right in that you don't want to breeze over that like portion of scripture, and because again it's only 2 verses, but there's so many ways. Not like ways to go with it, but so many things to chase and encompass that. And so what were some of what were some of the things that hit the cutting room floor for you?
For me.
Which, by the way, you got the meta glasses. These are just my reading glasses.
These are regular. Got it.
So you're not being
I was like, I'm not being recorded
sides.
all over the place. Well, I think like the kind of of who this interaction is with, I think is such a it's a cool kind of deep theological well, right? That this is we talked about this is a Christophany or theophany, right? It's a showing up of Jesus pre-incarnate, and I think there's and I want to, and I said that a little bit in the message because I want us to understand why it's important the way that Joshua responds and all these things. But I think there's like a theological well of what that means when we talk about like who God is and how God exists. We start talking about Trinitarian theology, that God is that the Father and the Son and the Spirit are pre-existing, like they've always been, and like John's going to mention this in the Gospels about, and so I think that's like that was a whole big world of like if we're in a Bible class, like this is a ton of stuff that we can unpack and what this means, and that. But I think when I think about where we are as a church and like the people that are in the room and how you've talked about this, but like how I want people to read their Bible, and the way I want them to hear from the message. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, I want us to at a high level understand this, but this wasn't a time to be like, let's get into like the rich kind of theological framework of what this means, because I do think like for this purposes, right, that it is good. This is like Orthodox Christianity, that we believe that that Jesus is the eternal begotten Son, that he's always existed, that he comes incarnate in the virgin birth, and there's a unique way in which he shows up on the scene with this like this dual nature and stuff, but what we see in the Old Testament, and you see this, we talked about the third and the fire, right, the fourth and the fire is another one of those instances, and I think those are important things for people to understand, and how to like marry those things when they're like, oh well, nobody can see God and live, or nobody like, or that God is only a spirit, and then we have these interactions with God actually shows up in physical, right? So that, I think that was a big idea that, and
to say there's a lot of people struggling with that. There's a lot of, even I've been starting to see stuff online, kind of these like content creator type, debater type people, whatever. But there is a growing faction of people who would identify as believers, identify as Christians, but really kind of reject.
They reject the virgin birth.
The idea, well, just an idea, kind of the Trinity, right? This idea of like. There's a challenging, these kind of long held standing beliefs of this Trinitarian idea that we see, and we see Jesus show up in multiple ways. And there's a lot of people who are, again, some of the stuff's like almost like news for me, or just like, wow, surprising me. But there is a growing number of people who really challenge the idea, struggle with articulating this idea, right? And it is a little bit weighty and heady and whatnot. But there is, it's funny, these ideas, at least for me, growing up in church for as long as I have, these ideas for me, they almost seem kind of second nature, right? And like, I kind of assume that everyone's on the same page. There's a checklist to get in, right?
Totally.
But there is a lot of people who I think do struggle, or do maybe not quite fully understand, or even be able to articulate where we see that in Scripture, right? The people who might go, I believe in the Trinity, but not understand how it's demonstrated, how to explain it and whatnot. So I think that's really. I think for some people you might hear that and go, well, duh. But for some people, I think this is a good thing to kind of just to explore, because that is something I think people are challenging,
absolutely
wrestling with.
For sure. When you see it throughout the whole Old Testament. You see in the beginning, let us make man in our image. You see, so there's different Christophanies. Throughout Scripture. We talk about the fourth man in the fire. You talk about there's an idea that Melchizedek was actually Jesus before.
My wife asked me about that when I was writing, and I was like, let's not get into it right
now. Because I mean that's a whole thing, like, because he's a king, he receives a tithe, but he's also a priest, and so Jesus in Hebrews talks about in the line, or in the order of Melchizedek, which is, so there's this thought of like, well, actually that was him just on the scene, like with Abraham kind of during that whole time,
right?
Then you get into when he wrestles with Jacob, wrestling with Jacob, and then wrenches his hip, and gives him the name Israel, which means to wrestle with God and live. And then, there's a couple others that I just start kind of like not coming to mind. And so, but you have to be careful, because kind of to your point, like I loved how you clarified that how it was Jesus, because it received worship, all that stuff. Because there are other angels, or there's even times where they'll call it an angel, but you have to get back to what is the Hebrew word of it,
right?
And then because angels won't receive worship,
right?
and there's angel sightings throughout the Old Testament, but that doesn't mean that they're actually Jesus
sightings. Yeah,
because the other thought on it would be that it wasn't Jesus, it was Michael, because Michael's the angel of like war or whatever, and then Gabriel's like the messenger.
Yeah.
At least you see the thing. But I love how you clarified that.
Yeah.
Because that is like a debate. And you're like, no, because he wouldn't have received worship then.
Right.
And he wouldn't have, like you're standing on holy ground, all that stuff. So, but that's again, what I love is that part shows just throughout the whole story of the Bible. It like Jesus doesn't all of a sudden appear in the Gospels.
Right.
That he's been there forever. And every time he shows up, it flips something.
Right.
Every time it flips something. So when he wrestles with Jacob, it flips it and changes the trajectory and the identity of Jacob from deceiver to the one who wrestles with God and lives. You see that here in Joshua, it flips it into now like the Lord's battles.
Right.
He's winning. Fourth man in the fire. It flips it, and all of a sudden, like Nebuchadnezzar. He was Nebuchadnezzar. Was it Nebuchadnezzar? I'm tripping right now.
The king.
The king. Now he's like, okay, your God is the God.
Yeah.
Right. There's all like it always, and then Jesus shows up in the scene and flips it. Like there's always that takes place, and so I thought that was it's pure gold.
Thanks, man. I really, like I said, I think that was there's a lot, and like to your point, George, there's a lot of people that it is a confusing thing, and it's like we could, and honestly I think part of the way that we think about it when we're teaching is it's a much better it's a much better dialogue than it is monologue. So we can we can ask questions, right? What does that mean, or help me understand those things, especially when you start to get to some of like the vocabulary words that we're going to use and talk about, and like categories of things, and talk about personhoods and stuff like that. It's like, rather than say those things and like people just nod and they're like, I don't know what's going on,
right.
And so I think in processing how we want to talk about them, I was like, I don't want to blow by it like it doesn't exist, like it's not a conversation piece. And I also want to make sure that we're giving people enough for them to have a semblance of understanding, but there's more, right? And there's more to like dive into and get into. But I do know, that it is a thing that people are wrestling with, which is really interesting, because it's like, this doesn't feel like one of the things that like is available to wrestle with.
Right.
This is foundational to what it means to be a Christian. Because if Jesus isn't who he professed to be, then he isn't sufficient to do what he professed to do.
Right.
And so I think that's why it's such an important thing. And to draw those attentions to those moments, like, oh, look, here he is again, here he is again, here he is again. And so when John writes that in John, that like in the beginning is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, right? Or we talk about like all things that are formed through him, and there's nothing formed through him, all those kind of things that are being said about him are important, and they're backed up in these instances where we see him like throughout the Old Testament.
Because that's the thing, is people think Jesus just showed up with Mary. Christmas.
And
you're like, well, no.
Totally.
But he had to come through in order to he couldn't just appear. He actually had to come through in order to like be in humanity.
And it's important. I think that's important, because it's like there's when he comes incarnate, he comes for a particular purpose, right? And he's come to like to fulfill the law, right, and to take on the punishment, the payment of sin, and so he also needs to be the right, like in right state, or have the right position, right? He needs to be born of the Virgin, like all the prophetic reasons, and then all of like the lineage reasons, right? To be born from Mary, to be for Joseph to be his dad, all these like his earthly father, like all of these things matter critically in him fulfilling all these prophecies to be the person that was promised. And that's what we see, like it's a unique unique instance when he shows up incarnate in the that is different than what we saw in Joshua, what we see in some of the other instances where he's showing up in those moments for like, for a particular purpose. So yeah, I think that was one of those things when, again, I think when the first times you read the Bible, you're like, it's so long and there's so many, there's so many words and there's so much going on. And then I'm like, dude, we just read 3 verses and we could talk about this for hours. There's just so much going on in just these little bits that you're like, it almost feels like you get to a place where you're like, I want more. I need more details. Like I need more details between these lines of like, what else was said in this conversation, and like different things like that. And so I think it's funny to see that, even like we talked about this at the end of Joshua demonstrating this maturity where he moves from kind of asking God to bless him to like yielding his will to the Lord's. And I think likewise, we come to the Bible and we're like, can feel a bit like drudgery, like when you're early on, you're like, dang, there's all these names and like dates and I don't know what these people. And then I think the more the Spirit quickens you to life and the more you kind of fall in love with the God of the Bible, like all of these names and like timelines start to make sense in a different way. And so much so that you're like, well, what else? Like I need the stories in between these generations of people. For sure. And it's such a cool thing to see how that grows and changes.
I was just it's funny. I was just giving a message to young adults, but just talking about how I think, especially for young people, but even just people who are new to their faith in general. But like how much especially reading the Old Testament is so important in understanding a lot of these concepts, because I think in a lot of ways we almost see Jesus showed up on the scene and was like, you don't need the Old Testament stuff no more. And it's like, no, like Jesus was a man of the text, and so much of what we see in him and his character and his nature, we see in the Old Testament, and so it's imperative that we are studying our text in its full context, because we see things in Joshua that pertain to Jesus, and, in the Gospels. And so, I think it's so good when we see things like that in Joshua to highlight that, because I think it's this, it's this meta narrative that is woven through these 66 books that is, all these different authors, different human authors, that were inspired by God, but you see that it is ordained by God, right? And it's inspired. And so there's these moments though in the Old Testament where it's so illuminating, but I think we have to get back to, again, I love you said, just a heart of loving the text and loving scripture, and also understanding that that Jesus came to fulfill the law, right? Fulfill in the Torah. And so but that doesn't mean he says in there, it's in Matthew, he says, I didn't come to abolish it. Right. Like that's not my purpose. And so much of human history, Christian history, we've actually taken that verse and made it mean the exact opposite of what Jesus said. And we've like, no, we don't need the Old Testament. It's like, no, he literally said, that's not what I'm here for you to do,
Yeah, that's
and again, we see it in these moments like that, where it's he is highlighting, and we see in ways where he's highlighting who he is and his character and all different things. Just
as you're saying that, George, it made me think, I was like, maybe this is an older analogy now, but it made me think a little bit like where the what we see in Jesus and in the New Testament, it's a lot like watching the Avengers, right? You're seeing all of their stories together, and you're like, you can watch it and be like, this is entertaining, right? And there's actionable thing, and this is cool, and then when maybe if you're deep into the lore, and you're watching all of these individual stories and how they lead you to this place, you get like just this deeper and kind of richer appreciation of what that looks like and what all these things mean, and like the significance and the symbolism in all these areas. And so it's a lot like that, like with the Old Testament of like, hey, we're seeing all these pictures and we're seeing all these things happen. And so when Jesus comes onto the scene incarnate, it's like the way in which the people would have received him is so different because of their awareness of the story, right? Because they've seen all however many films it is, right? They've seen all those things, and they're like, oh dang, all these things make sense now. I think it's pretty cool.
That's really cool. I'm curious, you're what I love about the church and getting to hear different communicators talk is that you're all teaching the Bible, and you're all we're all trying to communicate God's truth in different ways, but God's all made us kind of individually and uniquely different. And so you can listen to someone who's speaking truth about one passage, and then
Right.
you could hear someone else.
Yeah.
And they're different styles,
Sure,
different
sure.
contexts, or whatever. I'm curious for you, as long as I've known you, you're very you have a degree in communications.
Mhm.
You're very, very, I feel like, intentional with the
Yeah.
words that you choose and
Yeah.
how you articulate what you're trying to say and what you're not trying to not say.
Yeah.
I'm curious in your study, for this, because you had a little bit of time. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know how long you actually
Yeah.
decided
I
on
had
the
some
text.
time. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But in your study, like what was kind of your process in just kind of developing
Yeah.
what you wanted to
What I wanted to
communicate and what
communicate.
you felt like you were gonna
Sure.
have to cut.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Right away, I wanted us to understand who we were talking about. What was this interaction? And then there isn't. I mean, it's interesting to read his sermon. About three verses and like, okay,
Yeah.
because I don't want to make it say something it's not.
Right.
And so we're not seeing, like, we're observing a lot of the things that are happening in this like short interaction. And so as you kind of sit and think about what are the what does his like physical behavior demonstrate, I think was really a lot of where I kind of built those ideas out of. And then I think when we think about, when I'm thinking about teaching a text or whatever, and I want people to understand what's happening and what it's saying to us about who God is.
Yeah.
And then I think as communicators, especially, as people that are over shepherding people in a church, we want them to understand actionable, like application, right? So, and so when I was processing through those things, I was like, okay, recognizing that this is a Jesus interaction, there is a response that we see in Joshua as he makes this recognition, and it's a yielding of leadership, right? He doesn't argue for his title anymore.
Yeah.
He falls down on his face in worship, right? And so we talked about just like the response of worship. And then he asks for command. He says, "What do you want me to do?" Right?
Yeah.
Like, tell me where to go and I'm going to follow you, right? And so that's kind of where I drew out those three kind of big ideas is the idea of surrender, the idea of worship, and the idea of following.
That's good.
And then so kind of framing those out and then really just kind of sitting in them and so like, okay, well, what does it look like to surrender to Jesus, right? What does that mean? What does that mean for me as an individual? What are some of the other instances where we've seen people recognize Jesus or recognize God and like how they respond? I thought that was it's just such an interesting thing,
Right?
Because I think, again, like our narrative, and it's not an incorrect narrative, I think it's an incomplete narrative that like God is love, right? And so if God is love, then he's always good,
Right.
then like he's just gonna embrace me, right? We're just gonna hug it out because he's like a teddy bear in the sky,
Right.
and I love that, like, you look through scripture and nobody's like, man, I just want to give God a hug. Like, no, like everybody is terrified when they stand before the holy and righteous God. And so I think that, and there's a part of that that's important for surrender, right? That like, if he's a teddy bear, I'm like, do I trust that he can defend me if I'm surrendering to him, that he can keep me secure? Like, we have to know that God is mighty. And so there's part of surrender and recognizing rightly who God is. And then what does that, and then what does surrender mean, right, for us in our identity? What does it mean for us in practice? And so we kind of talked through some of those things, and so once kind of I work through some of the big frames, then I like to kind of sit in those spaces for a little while and really think about what do these look like in the life of a believer? What are the implications of these things? And then to your point of like, okay, what do I want to say actually? What are the right words to communicate? Because we talk about communication is like what you mean to say, what you do say, and what people hear, right? Are all these three layers. And so I really do. I do this all the time. I've just talked to myself out loud. for those of that don't know, like we moved workspaces. So now I work in like a co-work space, which makes it harder to talk to myself. When I was in an office alone, I could walk around and nobody thought I was crazy. Yeah. So now it's a little different. But it is something I do. Like because sometimes it is just helpful just to hear the words come out of your mouth and be like, oh, is that sounding like what I'm hearing in my head and how I want it to sound? Does it communicate what I want it to communicate? And so, being able to do that and kind of process through and make sure that I'm like that I am saying what I want to say, and I don't mean something else or how it's going to be interpreted. So that's kind of a little bit of the process of how I get to those things, and then just kind of resting in each of those spaces.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, that's excellent. Excellent.
What were some things? Were there any things that you felt like you did have to cut, or things you wanted to maybe chase a little bit longer that you felt like maybe it didn't quite fit?
Yeah. For sure. I think when we got to the surrender, when I started with surrender, like I have 3 pages of notes on it, and I was like, okay. Because it's, the whole thing is surrender, right? Like the gospel is about surrender. The Christian life is surrender. So it was like, okay, like we could do this whole thing. But I really felt like you can kind of see these movements. And so there was definitely stuff there that we could have talked more to, like we can get into more of some of the epistle letters and all these different ways in which Paul calls us to surrender as a means, as part of the process of following Jesus. And then worship, responding with worship is again, it's a whole big category of stuff. There's so many incredible stories about what worship is and means and does. And so, I think there's the story, I think it's in Chronicles, I think it's in 2 Chronicles, where, they're going to battle and like they tell them, I think it's Jehoshaphat. Man, I'm gonna get roasted if I'm wrong, but it's it's like he sends out the musicians first to play, and it's like they play, and then the Lord like causes the army to go into confusion, and they kill each other. It's the men that lead the worship, which is cool, and like that's such an incredible story about worship, right? That like worship before, they as warfare, and there's just like so much incredible, like good, rich theological ideas in those things. And again, it's like we could have spent the whole time, because he worships at Jesus's feet, and this is a correct response to when you interact, when you come face to face with God, is like to worship Him, and all that does for us. And then he's to follow. But I really what I like particularly about this one is that like he and Jeff kind of mentioned this to me when we were talking about it, but I was like, I just don't have enough time to chase it. Was like ultimately Jesus is calling him to follow him into victory, right? Like both practically in this moment, like he's like, Josh, you're gonna follow me, and I'm gonna lead you into victory. And I think like when we kind of 30,000 foot that the Christian life. As we're following Jesus into victory. Right. And it doesn't always, it doesn't look like what we kind of think and paint victory as ultimately, but ultimately it is, right? It's like, this is how you win. This is how victory looks in life. And so that's that was probably one of those ideas that I'm like, this is a really cool thing, because he is inviting him into victory, and this is what it looks like. It's surrender and it's worship, and then you're going to follow me into victory. But I think I had like some notes on it in case. And then like Thursday night, I was like, we're getting to following at like 6 minutes left, so this is the last part. Like this is where we're going to stop. But I do think that there is really some obviously there's like a lot of meat in that idea that the Christian life is one of victory, right? That like Jesus doesn't invite you into loss or into defeat, but ultimately like he maybe redefines what we think victory looks like, but it is a victorious life. That a life lived in obedience to God is always victorious. And so I think like you said, I got to do a funeral service this weekend, right before I got to teach on Sunday, which was which was beautiful because it was a life lived after Christ. And it was like, man, what a victorious life. It was this wonderful woman, and like she had 3 sons, all 3 of her sons loved Jesus, and like got up and proclaimed like who their mom was in faith. And then, her sister-in-law talked about how like she, helped save their marriage, like via the gospel. And like her grandson got up and just talked about what a blessing his grandma. And I was thinking about that of like, man, like this is a victorious life. Yeah. This is a victorious, like we look at this and say like, this is what Jesus says, like, well done, good and faithful servant. Right. Yeah. Right. And like what Paul says, like, I've fought the good fight. Yeah. Like this is a victorious life in Christ, that people recognize you're changed. And they experience that change. It's not just words that you say, but it's like a life that you live. And so that was for sure one of those ones that I was like, again, we do a whole service.
Yeah.
Exactly. What about, so for, again, looking at a text and wanting to teach it and geek out on it and stuff. The take off your shoes, holy ground. Yeah. Call back to Moses.
Yeah.
But the difference being now, if it's a Christophany,
right,
which it is.
Yeah.
So God the Father, no man can look at him and live.
Right. Yeah.
So he appears to Moses in a burning bush.
Right.
He appears to Joshua.
Yeah.
Right as there a man, which again, it's that thing of Moses was going to was the man in the desert,
right,
and Jesus is taking them into the promised land.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, that's such a cool, like, I love that. I remember, I don't know, it might've been you. I've heard a lot of your teaching. So but like just that reality that like, so Moses being the representative of the law, right? Like can show them their brokenness, right? And he leads them out of the slavery, but it's Joshua, like the Yeshua, that gets to lead them into the promised land. And so it's like this meta narrative of like the law can tell you you're broken, but only Jesus can lead you into salvation. So and it's like, again, that's such a cool thing. And then that moment for Joshua to like take off your shoes, it's just like what that moment is for him is so significant. And I think that like, again, like there's such a great parallel to like the Christian life, that there is a moment for you when you have a point of recognition that like you're on holy ground right now. The holy God of the universe wants to meet with you. And now you're filled with his presence and you stand on holy ground. I mean, that's it is such a cool, like significant moment. It's again, that's why it's like, we can spend the whole time on 3 verses. Like, exactly. We'll spend another year in a book at least, know?
Well, and this is again, one of those things where the science catches up with the Bible, because ultimately they're talking about grounding.
There you go, dude. He's connected.
Just connecting to the earth.
Yeah,
it's good. The ions are coming up to his feet. So I don't.
It's neutralizing the electricity in your body. Dude.
That was a joke, by the way. For anyone listening, they're like, "Wait a minute, what?" Oh man.
I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of. I mean, I think that in so many ways, there was a whole movement. I think it was like the 2000s. It's like Jesus is my homeboy.
Yeah. There's the T-shirts,
and there's so many different. There's this idea. I mean, Scripture was like, Jesus is my friend. Jesus calls me friend, right? Which is true.
I no longer
but we, I think, also have made Jesus so commonplace. I think I love this idea when you see, and with Joshua, you also see with Moses, right? But there is a reverence. I don't know if it's the word we use enough anymore, but this reverence for the Lord. You said it earlier, which is so true, that so often in Scripture we see people interact with Jesus. The angels are always saying, "Don't be afraid." Well, you say that because they're afraid. They're afraid, right? You're like, you just tear on your face. But there is a reverence for the Lord. There is a fear of the Lord that I think that we, in a lot of ways, have lost because we've just made him so commonplace. Right. And I think that like, I think so often what we see kind of precluding or preluding great victories is just again that you putting yourself in the right place before the Lord, and putting him in his right place, right? And I mean, obviously Joshua, spoiler alerts, you're going to walk into this great victory, right? And it's this, it's not even a reminder, it's a command from of like, remember, you remember who you are, take your shoes off. It's holy ground.
I think it's funny, as you were saying, because we're at home, we have our kids take their shoes off before they come in the house, right? Because I'm like, don't you're going to dirty our house as
Right,
it is,
sure,
but like,
yeah.
let's try to do what we can do.
Yeah.
But like, how much more so should we have? Like, we try to make our space clean and like set it apart, right? In that
Yeah.
way. But it's like, man, I'll trample with my shoes all over my interactions with Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
not create holy space,
Yeah.
right? And not treat him as holy space, right? Where, I think about, it's really interesting to just kind of sit and think with that for a minute of, how do I recognize
Yeah.
that like this is holy ground, that when I'm before the Lord, that this is holy ground,
Right.
and making sure that because I think there is like this tension, right? That like, I talked about this in one of the messages, not all of them, but in Hebrews, right? That idea of like, boldly you can approach the throne now,
Yeah.
right? And there's this picture of permission that like now
Yeah.
you can come in and it's so good and so beautiful, and still there's this tension of reverence of like,
Yeah.
okay, Lord, like I don't want to make you so common, that I'm putting my shoes on your couch,
Right.
like, but I also, and so I do want to recognize that you are holy, and that even though like I'm a son fully accepted, like that doesn't, the same way like my kids live in my house,
Right.
I'm not like, it's not a museum, and I'm going to ask you to take your shoes off because
Yeah.
we want to recognize that this is a space that we're trying to set apart.
That's right. Boldness doesn't mean arrogance.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
Boldness doesn't mean arrogance, and I think that when we do get to approach boldly, we are the beloved.
Yeah.
We are like, for the prodigal, like
Yeah.
he's there, runs to us. Like all of that is true.
Yes.
And at the same time, you have to know who he is.
Yeah.
And I think if you had a greater idea of who he is, I don't think we'd be as fearful through life when we face problems and issues and stuff,
Yeah.
or we'd have a greater confidence,
Right.
that like that you when you read in some of the Psalms of like being defeated, or whatever it might be, but knowing that ultimately victory's in him, like all of like those different things, like and then also like being what's the word, like when you talked about surrender, like then really being surrendered to his will, that what he says is better, like we're about to go into Jericho, and I'm like, I never want to read into scripture something that isn't there,
Right.
And if I'm ever going to teach anything, I'm always careful to say it doesn't say this, but I mean, like, can you imagine?
Yes.
Like, but can you imagine these people are like, they're rolling into their first city, and they can finally, like, we could have these homes.
Oh yeah,
we could have these.
You talk about like after everything.
and then but we're supposed to destroy it,
right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
And kill everything in it.
Yeah,
but we
but they're nice things.
I know. Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
wait a minute.
Did God know how nice these houses were?
Like,
yeah,
man. But just trusting with the Lord, like his ways are better.
Yeah,
but it doesn't always seem that way to us.
That's really good.
It doesn't always seem that way to us. That's why I like that part when he says, "Are you for us or for our enemies?"
Yeah,
right.
He's like,
neither.
Nah.
Yeah,
and this it says in the Message.
Yeah, nah.
Doesn't say this in the Message translation. That was a good joke. But yeah, dude, neither. I like.
Yeah,
you got to be on my side.
You got to be on my side. Yeah,
because that is that thing, right? Like, how many times do we look at people as enemies?
100%. Yeah.
And the Lord's like, I'm trying to save them too.
Right.
Ooh,
that's good.
And it flips in Romans chapter 12, dude. I love Romans 12. But there's that flipping of, where you love your enemies, but it's the idea that they're not your enemy.
Yeah.
Like, your enemies because they see you as an enemy.
Right.
And we're here not to destroy our enemies, but to, as it says in Romans 12, to love them.
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Yes.
And how hard is that thing? That's New Testament. No, we're still Old Testament
for
here.
sure.
You're gonna burn it all.
Yeah.
But
that was actually I forgot in my long list of notes, because I did have a cut for time of like a reframing of our fight
Yeah.
Right. Where that's the whole idea of like, we don't fight flesh and blood. We don't fight like the world fights. But it was like, well, Joshua's about to fight like the world fights, and it's like, you know, and it's like, because he's still carrying out the Lord's will in this way. And then as we like kind of look through new covenant eyes, like Jesus is redefining for us, like, who is your enemy, right? And our enemy isn't these flesh and blood people, right? They're spirits at work in the world, and there's the great enemy, and this is who the church is advancing against. And so that was an interesting, like, hey, we can, you know, when he says neither, he's reframing this idea of like, hey, I'm not on your side or on their side. You can be on my side, or you're not on my side. And really, and ultimately, that's what we talked about kind of in the beginning of Joshua, was that idea of like, here's all these people that have like particularly put themselves in opposition to God in the way that they've treated, you know, image bearers, in the way that they've treated children, in the way that they've practiced all these kind of heinous things, and they've put themselves in the place of being enemies of God. And then we're gonna see, like, this is the end result of those things. And I do think, I mean, I think even as you look at that, like, it is such a beautiful picture of what the gospel rescues you from. Right. That like, we aren't, you know, we're not doing those heinous things, you know, maybe some people, who knows, the media says otherwise. But we're still in the place, like Romans says, like, we're still in the place that we are God's enemies. Right. And this is what God does to his enemies. Right. He destroys their cities and crumbles them. And so when the power of the gospel comes in and is like, hey, look, this is what you deserve. You deserve for God to show up and your house to crumble and like laid to waste. And the beautiful, powerful, incredible thing about Amazing Grace is that God says, look, but I'm gonna demonstrate love for you in what Christ has accomplished.
And again, I think it just goes back to, I mean, what we just talked about is like, again, I think for us, the practical part of taking your shoes off is understanding that. 100%. Is that even for me, I've grown up in church my whole life, and you know, for so many metrics, you're a good Christian, and there's just moments where you just realize how desperately I need Jesus. And how much I deserve the full weight of my sin and consequence. And those are the moments where I think where it's a practical of you practically of it's taking off my shoes and realizing that, okay, maybe I didn't do all these heinous things, but in God's eyes I have.
And in God's eyes I have, totally.
And I am chief of all sinners, and I need that amazing grace. And the amazing grace isn't for them,
right?
It's
for me.
Yeah,
for me.
Totally. You know, and I think, again, I think we have to work that into our lives so much more of fixing our eyes. It's a phrase I've just been over and over again. It's like just fixing our eyes on Jesus. You know. And when you do, you realize how much you need him.
100%. I think one of the things that came to mind, we talk about taking off take off your shoes. It's like there's a kind of a popular phrase where people call people like casuals. You know, like all the hockey stuff just exploded. And they're like, oh, here come all the casual hockey. I'm like, I'm 100% a casual. I'm in USA, let's go. But I haven't watched any. 100%, dude. But I'm like, but I am for sure. But I think that spills into like our Christianity, like where you're like, are you a casual Christian? Because a casual Christian walks wherever they want to walk. There is no holy ground, right? And so that idea of like, I need to be like an intention, like I think the opposite is an intentional person, right? And like intentionally aware that like it's crazy that I get to be in the presence of God, right? And like I don't take that casually,
right?
And that one of the ways that you demonstrate that is to recognize that I'm in a holy place, and that like and I like it too because it's a physical thing, right? It isn't Joshua just like, wow, man, God's so good. I'm just thinking about how good he is. But he has a physical response, like both in the way that he falls down and then in the way that he prepares himself, right? That's like a move of an additional move of consecration of this space. And so I think about that of like, man, how do we make sure that we don't fall into the casual Christianity, right? Where like everything is just habitual and it's just kind of like, like you're saying, we become kind of familiar with Jesus,
Yep.
everything becomes very normal,
Yeah.
And that just leads to a place where we don't maybe have that reverence.
Yeah.
I was even thinking about it like this morning, kind of in terms of that thing of like, what do I do to like prepare myself to get into the Word or like be with the Lord? 'Cause some days, honestly, I don't. Like I'm just like I got to get into it,
Right.
and I have a little routine,
Mhm.
but it's usually like a routine that's more about like I gotta have some water,
Mhm.
like
Right.
I was like I
Yeah.
gotta hydrate a little bit, so like
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more alert as I'm getting into it. But a lot of very minimal of those practices are about recognizing the space that I'm entering into,
Yeah.
right? And maybe literally taking my shoes off.
Yeah.
Creating like a room and an environment where I'm like, oh Lord, this is set aside for you.
Right.
Like this isn't I'm going to sit down and read a book today.
Right.
But this is a space that I want to create,
Yeah.
like, because I recognize what's happening.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good.
The go ahead.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
you go.
No, I'm chasing something right now.
Well, I was just kind of thinking a little bit in the again we hit it a few minutes ago, but just the idea of like a um are are you for us or against us,
Yeah.
right? And I think in so many ways um we've made the Jesus to be an a trophy and adornment for our lives and our agenda. And I just think
Yeah.
that's a question that so many people ask. I think some people need to ask a question more because I think
Yeah.
again we'd get the response of
Yeah.
the Lord saying, "Well, neither."
Yeah.
And it's the idea of I'm either on His side
Yep.
or I'm on the wrong side.
100%.
There is no like the Lord being on my side, and I think
Yeah.
again that's part of that surrender because I think we've made, and I don't know if it's our American culture. I don't know
Sure.
what it is, but
Mhm.
we've made so many things. It's about us. What can Christianity do for me?
Right.
What can Jesus do for me? What
Yeah.
can working hard do for me? All these
Right.
different things are really for what can I get out of it,
Right.
right? And so I think, and sometimes just we've been taught poorly, just it hasn't been modeled correctly, but we approach our faith in that same manner. And so without even knowing it, sometimes I think sometimes it may not even be malicious,
Yeah.
but we approach our faith and approach Jesus with this idea of,
Yeah.
well, are you on my side?
100%.
And I remember hearing a message probably over a decade ago where they were going through this, and that was such a thing that stuck out was like, the Lord's response is neither.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Neither.
I'm
Yeah.
not on human side.
Side. Right.
Like you are on
My
my
side.
side, or
Yeah.
you are on the wrong side.
Right.
And I think that that's something that like yeah, even that could be a whole message in
Totally.
itself. I feel like,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
there is
Right.
an element of us, I think, being aware of again who God is. I think so
Yes.
much is
Yeah, yeah.
aware, but like who God is and what our place is, and asking the question, am I on His
Yeah.
side?
Yeah.
Am I surrendering myself and my will
Mm-hmm.
to what the Lord wants to do?
Yeah.
Or am I trying to make Him fit my agenda? And I think what happens so often is when we have made that to be the case,
Yeah.
and then He doesn't fit our agenda,
Yeah.
we walk away
Totally.
because He didn't meet our expectation,
Right.
but we had the wrong expectation.
Yeah. 100%.
And we had a view of Jesus that like He's gonna make me happy or rich,
Yeah.
or He's gonna,
Yeah.
if I follow Him, then I'm gonna have the perfect wife or
Right.
husband or
Yeah.
job, or I'm gonna live in such area code.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't happen, we're like, well, what the heck?
Yeah.
I thought this is what this whole thing was about. And
Totally.
it's like, no, it wasn't.
It's not.
You,
Yeah. It
you
wasn't.
had
Yeah.
the wrong picture of who
Yes.
God is.
Yes.
And it's like in this moment, He's reminding Joshua, reminding the people of Israel, give them a right picture of who He's like.
Yeah.
Well, neither.
That's good.
And that surrender piece, again, it's something I wish we would talk about more and understanding that. And surrendering, it's like, surrendering our life to Him for sure.
Yeah.
But that surrendering of our life is
Yeah.
oftentimes to our agenda.
Yeah.
Our,
I think I would say like I think a lot of the things that we're seeing in people's response to kind of like I guess not globally, but like national like Christian ideals, right? Is not coming from a position of like I'm surrendered to Jesus as much as it is like
Yes.
I'm taking some of the things that I kind of think Jesus says and I'm putting them on my side
Yeah.
and like weaponizing them against people.
Yep.
And then people are like, wait, that's what Jesus is saying? Like, and they don't, because we are an ever growing kind of biblically illiterate place.
Yeah.
Maybe people don't even know that like
Right.
this is being mishandled in the way it is. And so they've now kind of viewed Christianity as in this way that it's been used incorrectly. Right. And like we haven't gotten to that story, but we're going to get to the story of the Israelites trying to use God
Yeah.
and be like, all right,
Yeah.
we know how to win this battle.
Yeah.
Put God on our team, and then we got it, right? And like, and it's a little bit of what we're seeing
For sure.
nationally, right?
Absolutely.
Of like, well, let's put God on our team.
As God and this.
It's God, if it's God and our agenda,
right?
And then who can stand against us, right? If we got God on our side,
right?
And this is such an incredible reminder of that. Of like, no. He says no.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Man. Sorry, I just had to chase a thought.
No.
Just jot it down.
Just, it was
chair for later.
Well, no, because I mean, it's so hard right now because like as we're talking, so much Jericho stuff is coming to my mind. I'm like, oh, we could do and that.
Yeah.
But the thing that again, like I just going back to the removing of sandals,
Mm-hmm.
and then because like it starts, Moses, take off your sandals, you're on holy ground. Joshua gets that right.
Yeah.
But there's but through the wilderness, it specifically says that the entire time their clothes did not wear out and the sandals on their feet did not wear out. So I just thought those are the things for me that I get curious in scripture about is like, man,
it's an interesting note.
It's an interesting note of like, okay, and now, so how it starts, how it's sustained, again, Moses' deliverance, and then we're getting into this, but this is being sustained in the wilderness and now taking off the sandals again. But this is the other thing. Okay, so thematic. I'm not saying this is what the passage is saying at all, but this just where my mind goes is that, okay, where else in scripture do sandals matter? Like you go, like Jesus talks about shake the dust off your feet,
right?
Like if a town won't receive you. And in particular times in the Old Testament, sandals were a form of covenant or a form of exchange. So, it was a transfer of ownership. Yeah. It's like Ruth and Boaz. Like so Boaz is a picture of the kinsman redeemer.
Right.
And I forget the guy that's supposed to
Mordecai? Not Mordecai.
No.
Haman.
No. You're an Esther right now.
Yeah. It was supposed to be the guy that was supposed to marry her. It was like her husband's brother.
The husband's brother, and he doesn't want to do it, and so he gives the sandal to Boaz as a sign of.
Oh, interesting. I don't remember that.
Yeah, as a sign of this is now yours.
Yours.
She is now yours.
Yeah.
And just so my mind, like I don't know where.
I thought you were gonna go with like prodigal son.
Oh yeah,
right. Of shoes and slavery. Of like like they didn't have sandals.
Yeah.
But it's that's it's kind of a different direction where like he provides them sandals.
Yeah.
As like as a picture of sonship.
But so it makes then I wonder. And again, it doesn't say this anywhere, but you'd have to always go back to what is their context, how are they reading it, and if they understand that sandals are that of covenant.
Yeah,
and he's saying
I always thought I think I'd heard it, and I think about it as like a layer of separation, right? So it's taking off your sandals, so like you're grounded, right?
Right.
But in reality, like you're connected, right? You like there isn't this communion that the Lord invites you into isn't like. And so I think that's like I always thought that was kind of a cool picture of one of the ways in which you recognize this space as holy is to like remove barriers between the two of us. And so I thought that's kind of again another cool picture of just like of communion that like the Lord calls it to be like together. Right. Even like when we talk about communion now, like this idea of like how we participate in it is ingestion. Like this is going to become part of your physical body. You're going to be connected in a unique way that's different from how else you could kind of normally do this. So again, 3 verses is like we could there's so many different things. Because like you said, George, this a whole piece of surrender and a right picture of God is such a critical element to everything. I think if we think wrongly about God, like everything else kind of goes sideways. Right. It's like if you're leveling tools off, everything's nothing's going to be level. And so that's like a proper view calls for a surrender and a recognition of who he is and how you respond to him.
Yep.
Yeah. That was dope. Hey man,
Hey man,
for your
thanks
first,
for having me,
first
guys.
time, bro, you slammed it at the
Love
park,
that.
bro. That was good.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, and again, just to kind of highlight something really cool. Again, maybe for some of you guys who are watching online, and maybe you're not, you're not physically in the space, but something that really cool just happened, and the kind of a fruit of this message from Pastor James is, I mean, what do we? The final count. I mean, 30 plus people.
30 plus people.
30
yeah.
plus people. Salvation. Come on now.
You know, rose a hand for salvation.
Yeah.
And accepted.
Really, really
Let's go.
beautiful, man.
Jesus, and I think, I mean, just if you haven't watched the message, you should go back and watch it. But I think just especially the way that you, ended the message, kind of landed the plane and brought it all together, talking through surrender was awesome. And I think it's always the best fruit of any message, right? Is to see people respond in that way.
Yeah.
Right? You want people to have their life change and operate differently, how they think and act and operate. But man, to see people accept a direct invitation to the gospel.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it was cool.
So,
it was a fun way to lead them through, to like start
Yeah.
with that idea of surrender.
Yeah.
And we led through the prayer. It's like, Jesus, I surrender. Like,
Yeah.
This is the first step. So
cool. Right on.
Let's
Well,
go.
I think we've heard quite a little bit, but we're going to Jericho next week.
Jericho.
Yep.
Man. Oh gosh. Yeah. Jericho. I actually with our rhythm leadership school, I did like kind of a whole vibe board through it of
Mhm.
what we could do, where it could go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what I get curious about in the text.
yeah.
There's things that I think, again, there's going to be a lot of, if I had more time next week on this, because I don't want to, I think Jericho's actually been taught really wrong a lot of times.
Dang. I won't give you my notes.
Um,
Probably part of the problem.
because, well, I mean, but just from the standpoint of, again, like for me, it's there's right principle, but wrong passage a lot.
Sure.
So people, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, like we there are certain things that yes, but that's not what's
From
happening.
this.
Not
Yeah.
from this.
Yes.
Right.
So like I have to be careful in this as I go through, because I'm like, oh wait,
Yeah.
this, that, the other thing. But going through, I like really, this is God saying, you're giving me the first city, and you're
Mhm.
giving it to me by completely destroying it. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
like that's that, like kind of going back a little bit to surrender in that
Sure.
sense of man, we're surrendering what we could have.
Yeah.
And then you get later into Achan's sin, because Achan actually
Right.
steals from it,
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
right.
takes what he's not supposed to.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. There's a whole, the idea of you give God your first.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a really interesting way. Like I don't think I certainly never taught it that way.
yeah.
But I think that's very true.
You
Right.
give
That it is
God
the
your
first city.
first.
Yeah.
And so, and you model that, and the way they do it doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
There is they march and they're quiet.
Mhm.
They don't say a word.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
You know, and then the last day they shout, and that's when the walls fall.
Yeah.
And it's 6 days, but it's on the 7th day. 6 days, the number of man. I don't know. Like there's all sorts
for
of
sure.
like
Yeah,
the stuff
dude.
that you can chase. And so
a lot of threads.
a lot
to
of
pull on,
threads,
for
and I'm
sure.
like, I don't know where we're going, you know, because I don't want to like, because that might be like, that means nothing about the 6 days. But
Yeah.
usually, if there's numbers mentioned, it's
That's right.
it's
Yeah.
specifically
There's
for
something
something.
there. Yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, yeah, then we can chase the whole thing about why did they kill the whole city, and I actually have something I just wrote down about that. I'm not gonna say.
Is that what you're ready?
Yeah. So next week,
Yeah.
let's go.
Well, very cool. Well, thanks so
Yep.
much for hanging out today. Hey, you should come up with the word since this is your.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you 20 seconds. I'm gonna give you your play.
The word that they have to put
In the
at
comment
in the
section
comment section is
to
they
let
made
us
it all
know
the
they
very,
made it to the end.
very end.
So they made it to the end.
Yeah.
By the way, we're close to 4, dude. We're 3.91.
We're getting there slowly but surely. I need our YouTube people to continue to.
Does that mean we need 90 people to get to 4,000?
Not less than 100. Yeah,
Less than 100. If
Come on now.
you listen to this,
We got some bump last
subscribe
week,
to it.
and that was great.
Okay.
We're gonna start posting some more on Instagram. Maybe some more Instagram
Okay.
people get them over.
It's wild that people listen to things on YouTube and they don't subscribe to them.
It's actually like a
Yeah,
very
it's
common. Like
very common.
when
Yeah.
we started YouTube, it was all about subscribing.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I mean, even I see stuff all the time, and I'll look back later, like, oh, I was never subscribed to them, but they're every time they post, they're in my feed.
there's, dude, my son just showed me this guy that has like, this guy, I think he actually goes to our church,
Hmm.
but he's like viral on Instagram,
Mhm.
but they don't follow him. So he's got all these reels with like
Crazy.
hundreds
yeah.
of thousands of views, one
Uh-huh.
with like 2.4 million.
Yeah,
And he's got less than 2,000 followers.
Yeah.
Because they just scroll.
Just
they
scroll,
like it,
like
they watch
it,
it, and
yeah.
they share it, but they don't.
Yeah. They don't hit the follow.
They don't go follow.
Yeah, dude.
I just posted a blog about that on my other website. But yeah, it's funny. But yeah. So
I'll go read it.
there you go.
Read it, dude.
It's all about the
Am I subscribed to it?
churches. You actually are. But
Yeah, I am.
I added you. I don't know. I forced subscribed you. Yeah.
Subscribe me. I love it.
But yeah, we appreciate, man, and all of you guys who are locking in with us, and man, we're very grateful for all of you. There was something else specifically I was going to say, but
was it like, subscribe, post?
Yeah, like, subscribe,
share it,
do all the things.
Do all the things.
you know what I was gonna say?
What were you gonna say?
Okay, really cool thing. Last week we talked about the creative posts.
Oh yeah,
the creative job that we're posting. We got a lot of really rad people that
Let's go. Come on now.
And it's funny. My wife Kaylee and I, who's HR here, she was like, "Man, there's some really rad people." And like some of these people don't go to our church. And these are people we had someone drop off for a resume, and they're like, "Yeah, I just listen."
What other jobs what do we got right now?
So I was like, maybe we started talking about more jobs.
Was it project manager?
The project manager, yeah, we talked about that project manager
We
roles.
need a communications person, right?
Comms. We need a lot of things, but yeah, there's a cool response from you guys who are watching and listening.
Because you made it to the end. They have to make it to the end.
You have to make it to the end.
Make it to the end, dude.
To get to the good stuff, dude. So,
all right, I think I'm gonna say that our ending word is holy ground.
Holy ground. All right, so if you made it to the end, you know what to do for our podcast, Apple, and YouTubers. Drop holy ground in the comments. Let us know you made it to the end. And we're thankful for you all. We'll see you next week when I've had more time.
Peace. Latest.